Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Welcome to probably what will be the weirdest April on record that most of us can remember, right?
I mean,
after the weirdest March on record.
I hope you guys don't have weirder Aprils in the future.
I hope this is the peak of the weirdest April we ever have. But I mean, I wonder, we're recording this like a week and a day ahead of time. So by the time this comes out, so many things could have changed. So if we say something weird.
Correction. So many things will have changed.
Yeah, will have changed.
We have no idea.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that I don't know. But my hope is that we will get better at habituating to change. Because I think at first it's like been a bit of a shock. And the more that we kind of adjust to a new normal, the easier it might be on some of us.
Like we're starting to settle in as a culture to this new reality. At least the grocery stores aren't quite so picked over. The panic shopping has subsided.
Yeah, I have plenty of toilet paper now.
Thank goodness. So I think people are sort of getting their bearings about them.
Yeah.
And I hope that continues. We'll see where we're at when this comes out.
I saw my dad this morning for his birthday, but I remained 6 feet away from him and I put his present on the floor and I walked away and he went and picked it up and got back in his car and that was that.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Oh, Lord. So, okay.
Well, I feel like our Dear Krachel questions
they are a mirror of
very much reflect the energy that we're all experiencing.
And what's funny is 2 out of the 3 came in before anything crazy started happening. So it's more just like they all happened to I would say coincidentally, I think it's more synchronistically align on one theme, which is fear and all of its various manifestations, panic, anxiety, depression, PTSD. I use that in the more colloquial sense, not in the actual literal, I am diagnosing anybody with PTSD. Obviously, I am not qualified to diagnose anybody with anything. But that's kind of the theme of these questions. And I feel like it's very appropriate because it's what a lot of us are experiencing. And I'm glad that we can talk about it.
Yep.
So, all right, let's just dive in. Dear Krachel, I just started my new job after only being in my old one for 6 weeks. I spent the day before starting in tears and have broken down in tears every day since. I feel heavy and trapped every day I work. It's like I'm being suffocated and just need to run away from my attacker. I actually had a full-blown panic attack in my sleep about going to work. How bizarro is that? In my field, I'm very sought after and have gotten every job I've applied for. But outside my field, no one will even look at me. I've spent so many hours trying to convince other industries to just talk to me to no avail. My therapist has encouraged me to follow my gut feeling since it's making me so unhappy. She actually said the same thing Rachel said in a previous episode about being done when there's contempt. But no one will let me try to be good at something else. I've sent hundreds of applications and not one single person has gotten back to me for jobs outside my industry. What can I do to change this? Multi-trick pony.
Oh, multi-trick pony. I very much feel you in that sense of dread and knowing that you're in the wrong type of work and in the wrong place, but feeling completely stuck in that and trying to escape. And that's the energy of this whole question was escape.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
like
I mean,
you literally use the word attacker. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're being attacked and you're being trapped. And
height of victimhood right
to
here.
Escape.
Yeah.
And I have been there. I know how desperate and how awful that feels. And so I have a lot of sympathy. And I also am thinking about a recent episode where we talked about the comparisons of job searching and dating. And just as in dating, when there's this kind of desperate energy that is very off-putting to the other person. The same thing is true in the job seeking side of things. And I know that that's really frustrating to hear because you're like, but this is where I'm at. This is how I feel. And I don't want to blame you for that energy because we all know what that feels like. But you can also see how that's probably you're kind of tripping over that energy in trying to escape.
So I'm going to use an example that might get me in a little bit of trouble.
And that's your whole thing.
I'm going to plow through because I think you guys will understand. And I don't think anyone's going to I don't think anyone's going to take issue with this. I think you guys are smart enough and nuanced enough to understand I'm not downplaying by using this example. But I kind of want to like shock multi-trick pony enough so that she understands the energy she's coming at this with and why we have to focus first on changing the energy, because if you don't change that first, nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like, I feel like what she's asking is she's wanting to go from a place of incredible fear and incredible panic and incredible desperation to
fulfillment and happiness.
Of course. And of course,
belonging.
That's what she wants. You know, the longer that she's held in this panicked state, the more she's going to crave relief. And so it's understandable that that's what she wants. And that's a huge leap to make. And that might be part of the problem and why it's not happening is because you're asking yourself to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. And the visual that popped up in my mind is this is like someone who's in an abusive relationship. Like they are in a relationship with a violent alcoholic. And why is it that that person very often ends up in a relationship with another violent alcoholic? It's because that is what they have habituated to. That is what they expect. That is the energy that they are kind of hanging out on. And it's not about blaming them for being at that energy.
Of course not.
But the thing is that what you believe is normal or what you have habituated to is often what you are going to keep getting. Even if you don't want it, even if you hope for better, if you are habituated to it, you will often keep attracting it into your life because the energy you have around it is so strong.
And I also think that if we're using that analogy, which I actually think is a valid analogy here, we all recognize that that person is probably not going to go directly from that abusive relationship into a totally healthy, balanced, loving, compassionate relationship immediately. There's going to have to be some healing and some stepping stones to get to that place. And part of what I think, this is true on an energetic level in terms of your mindset and moving that from a place of, I need to escape to I'm excited about a new opportunity. And this is also maybe true on a practical level too, where if you've been applying for hundreds of other jobs outside of your industry and nobody is even taking a look, then I wonder if maybe you need some volunteer opportunities in another industry. Maybe you need some education. Maybe you need some kind of a stepping stone to move you from here to there, to align yourself more with a new industry. Because maybe this is the same thing of trying to jump from one extreme to the other. And there might be some stepping stones along the way that really might help you and also make the whole thing feel way less overwhelming and out of control, because you can control some of the smaller steps you take to get closer to a new industry. Just like you can control, I'm going to change my mindset little by little, instead of I'm going to just try to now be a completely hopeful, optimistic person who never has these moments of panic.
Right.
That's asking way too much of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's going to make you actually feel more trapped because you're trying to leap too far and you end up right back where you were. And then you feel more stuck.
Mm-hmm. And again, to revisit my analogy, if you are habituated to an incredibly unhealthy situation, it's almost impossible that you would then be able to jump into an incredibly healthy situation, not because you don't deserve it. I want to make that very clear. Not because you don't deserve it, not because you're not inherently worthy of it, because that would always be true, but because there's a lot that you have to unlearn in order to be a match to a healthy relationship. Often the reason people are in super, super unhealthy or even abusive relationships is because as kids, that's what they experienced. And that's what their definition of how they should be treated is. And that's their expectation. And so there's a lot of work to be done to undo your own expectations in a situation like that and to sort of upgrade your own belief system and your own wiring so that you can expect better from life.
Another podcast episode that's coming to mind as we're talking about this is the one about healing the worthiness wound.
For sure, with Thais Sky.
And
I think it was in October-ish of 2019.
Yeah, we can link to it. I feel like there could certainly be some work to be done in the worthiness category here. Of like, I deserve a job that doesn't make me cry every day.
Yes. Yes.
And once you can feel solid in your own worthiness and your own deserving, then that's going to reflect very differently in the results that you get as you seek that out.
I'm also definitely going to link to our episode 2 weeks ago about why dating and job searching are the same thing. Because I think right now, Multi-Trick Pony is very much in that situation one of my clients was in, where she was desperate to find a new job. And I had to give her some tough love about, you think you need a job that's going to fulfill you, but what you actually need is to make money in her situation. In Multi-Trick Pony's situation, I think what she actually needs is something that allows her to take a step out of her situation.
She needs space to heal. She needs something to pay the bills while you do some serious healing and recovering before you're ready to jump into something with really positive, replenished energy.
Right. So it might not be the perfect version of what she's envisioning. It might be something that allows her to get space from this, but is maybe a step backward, or is maybe something that she feels is like beneath her or backsliding. And often that's something we have to grapple with too, is, you know, what we're willing to do to transition out of a situation like this. You know, it might look like we're not making progress, but sometimes we have to be willing to make that sacrifice if you want to make a transition.
And to make some progress on an emotional level more than anything. So even if from a very linear job standpoint, it looks like you're taking a step back, if actually you're feeling a lot better every day and more peace of mind and more hopeful, you've taken a huge leap forward. So it just depends on how we're measuring progress.
Okay. So that was a lot. There's another Dear Krachel where we answered a similar question. This was a long time ago. And if I can find it, I'm going to link to it. But it might take me a while to go peruse because I'd have to read through like all of the questions within the last couple of years and figure out which episode is that I'm thinking of. But if I can...
We at least have 2 for you.
I have 2, but I have
3.
one very specifically that I remembered that would be relevant to Multi-Trick Pony. So I will try to find that for you.
Okay. Question number 2. Dear Krachel, my friend sent your podcast to me, and I thought I'd see if you can answer my question too. I have moderate to severe depression. I'm getting treatment, but it's quite flared up right now. I got a new job, and I'm struggling to cope with it. I don't think it's the job. I think it's my mental health. I don't know if I should tell my new boss or keep quiet. I'm not the best employee right now, but I don't know what to do about that. I don't want to get fired or ruin another relationship like my last job. So what should I do? And that is from Steven.
What's interesting about Steven's question is that I can't tell if he's afraid of ruining his current job like he did the last one, apparently, by talking about it or by not talking about it.
I know. I was wondering the same thing.
So I feel like we should address both questions.
Well, I think either way, my answer is the same.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which is, I think this is a time for transparency.
I think transparency is always a good idea. But, though, again, I feel like I just say the same thing over and over and over again. And maybe you guys like that. I don't know. I think that the way that you communicate it is very different than what you say.
Always.
Right?
Always.
What you say is like 20% maybe of what matters, and 80% is in how you communicate it.
Right. So you can imagine going to your boss and being like, I know I kind of suck at my job right now because I'm depressed. Right? Like,
great. That's probably not helpful because you're still letting that person interpret a ton.
Exactly.
That's the problem, is when you're not transparent. I think that you give other people the reins and you let them decide what the narrative is about you.
Because they are going to make up a story. Because we're all making up stories about everything all the time. We can't help it.
Yes.
So you can let them come up with their own story about why you're not being, quote unquote, as good as your job as you should be.
Which is likely not going to be flattering or as accurate or good for you.
Which, by the way, may or may not even be their story, frankly. I just want to put that out there, too. Oftentimes, we feel like, it's so obvious that I'm not doing enough, or it's so obvious that I'm not good at this. And sometimes it's not obvious. Nobody's even realizing it. It's just you.
Yeah, he seems to have a past experience with it being obvious.
But even if they are picking up on it, they're probably thinking about it differently than you imagine they are.
Yeah.
So you could let them just have their own story about that.
Who knows what that is?
Yeah. Or you could help dictate that narrative a bit by being honest. And I think a much better approach for how you could speak up about this is to say something like, I wanted to be really honest with you. I have been diagnosed with some depression. I'm getting treatment. I'm doing the best I can every day at this job. Sometimes that looks different on a day-to-day basis, but I just want you to be very aware that that's where I'm at. And I wanted to, but I'm working on my mental health, and I'm also working on doing a good job at this job.
Yeah. And I would say, like if you have questions or thoughts or concerns, you're welcome to bring them up with me.
Sure.
What I don't want is, to create a lack of communication. Like I want there to be open communication so that you feel free to ask me whatever you need to ask me, or that we can talk about my duties or my performance, because the last thing I want is for you to make an assumption about why I'm not doing something or why I'm not doing something or whatever. Like, let's just be open and honest about it if we can.
And remember, you're talking to another human. They probably have empathy for you as someone
hope so. I really do.
Otherwise, your own life
might not be a great job if they have zero empathy for your mental health experience.
Seriously. So most people, if you're just honest and you say, hey, this is where I'm at, they're going to understand.
Yeah, right. And I think I think it also might benefit you to say, I'm certainly not sharing this because I'm asking for special treatment or anything,
Right.
I'm sharing this because I want to be very clear about my history and my current struggle. And I don't want there to be any assumptions about, if you notice that I might be off one day or something, I don't want you to assume why. I want you to be clear about what I'm going through. I think that's so much healthier than the alternative.
It's just to get some understanding in both directions. You're not even really asking for anything. You're just saying, hey, here's a glimpse into who I am and what I'm struggling with right now and where I might need a little bit of extra support. And if you pick up on something, that might be what's going on. But we can continue this conversation.
Right. I mean, I feel like this is the same as any issue you might need to communicate, right? Like
if you had an aging parent who required a lot of your energy, you might need to tell your employer, just so you know,
sometimes that's where my mind is at. Right.
Or I have a kid who needs extra attention.
Or I have a chronic ailment that's physical and manifests physically depression does manifest physically, but you know what I mean? It originates physically, as if the brain isn't physical. You know what I'm saying? Right. Things that people can see, they understand better. I think the one of the struggles about depression and anxiety is that people can't see where it originates. And so they have a hard time sometimes understanding it. Yeah. I don't think this is really different than having to communicate any circumstance that you're in life that affects your work.
And transparency is always best all around because, again, no one's making up stories and you don't feel like you have to pretend all the time. So if you have other things going on in your life, then if you go to work and feel like you have to act like that's not true, that can actually make everything a lot worse.
Yeah.
So if you can be just yourself, this is where I'm at today, and just be really honest about that, it's actually going to help you probably be a better employee because you don't have the added pressure of trying to pretend like everything's okay when it's not.
Also, I'm just going to add, having to pretend is depressing.
Yes.
It makes everything a lot worse and harder on your mental health. So being transparent can actually be a really big weight off of you. And you can just kind of show up and have more permission to just be who I am that day. And sometimes that day is not going to be great. And sometimes that day is going to be better. A lot of people are working while depressed. You are not alone.
Yeah.
So, okay, I hope that helps. And feel free to give us an update, Stephen. And also thank you to your friend for sharing our podcast.
Yeah.
I love how your friend was like, I don't know how to solve your problem, but these two random girls might be able to help you. Okay, so on to question number 3, our last question. This one's the one that's on the nose. Dear Krachel, with everything going on with the pandemic, it really is mind-boggling to think where we were just a month ago. So oblivious to how much our lives in the country could change in a week or a day. Just a week into quarantine, so many people are out of work, trying to settle into a work from home and homeschool life, and this could last for months. When we get back on our feet, I can't help but think how I'm going to mentally manage expectations and my anxiety of day-to-day life without feeling PTSD from this experience. Any idea on how we can learn to settle and enjoy life again without turning into permanent disaster preppers just waiting for something bad to happen again? Meg.
Oh, Meg, you asked the question that all of us are asking. So thank you for articulating exactly how probably everyone listening is feeling right now and what they're worried about. So I'm very glad you asked.
I mean, can I just say something, which is, I think that, you know who would also say we were oblivious was us on September 10th.
Yep.
Was everyone on December 6th, 1940, which is the day before Pearl Harbor. I think I got that year right. I definitely got the day right. That was unprecedented. And like, so I want to remind you, that's like kind of the first point. Humans have gone through plenty of unprecedented times before. The issue is that often we individually haven't gone through something quite like this. If you look back on human history long enough, what's happening right now is actually not abnormal. It's actually an oddly normal part of the human life cycle, which is crazy shit happens and scary stuff happens. And we have to learn how to adjust to it. And so we should all give ourselves patience and a little bit of grace in the adjustment period, especially if we've never gone through something like this before.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up looking back and seeing how this has happened before, because I think that helps put in perspective that some of us have been through either globally really challenging situations or nationally or just personally. And oftentimes when you're in it, there is a very genuine fear that I'm going to feel like this indefinitely. I'm going to be this scared forever. Even when life goes back to normal, what if I'm still afraid to go out and now I'm, a germaphobe? Or what if I'm always worried about my parents or my kids?
What if I'm afraid of someone flying a plane into a building?
Exactly. Right.
And you know what? We very
quickly got back to traveling.
We did. That's what I'm saying. People got back on planes. Like, it's been almost 20 years and we don't worry about that every day anymore. But we were at the beginning. Life was very weird for a while there. Very different, very unprecedented. And people did go back to normal and they were not living in fear every day.
No, it's true. One of the best things about the human spirit is that it is always adapting to its current circumstance. We can normalize to all kinds of crazy things. And honestly, people in other cultures have normalized to a much, much harder just day-to-day life. And they're not in angst the way you and I would be about it right now, because that's normal.
Become their normal.
So what's going to happen is we're going to adjust to life when it becomes normal again after this.
You're going to adjust to this
time
before this is going to become normal before we go back to anything that we would consider normal.
Then it's going to start feeling weird to go out and about all the time.
Right.
Or to hang out in groups of more than 10.
I think the problem is that all of us, including you, Meg, are probably too much in it right now to be able to accurately project about what our reaction is going to be when things go back to normal and when the future, arrives.
But when you see how you've adapted in the past, it can help remind you, okay,
oh, yeah,
I can adapt to this too, even though I don't know how right now. I was listening to a podcast episode recently. It's Laurie Santos's podcast, The Happiness Lab. And she has done a little bonus series about how to maintain essentially your sanity and try to be somewhat of a healthy person in the midst of all of this. And she brought on an expert in Stoicism. And he gave a really helpful mental exercise to try in the midst of all of this, which is to imagine yourself many, many, many years down the line. Because this situation is temporary. There will come a time when we're not worried about the coronavirus anymore.
No, we're worried about something else.
We'll have a vaccine, and that's not going to be something that's on our minds every day. And if you put yourself out into that time, even if you're imagining one day talking to your grandkids or your own kids about what this experience was like, tell the story of what you want to happen. So imagine telling the story, we went through this really hard time as an entire world, but we all banded together. And even though we were isolated, we were making sure that we stayed connected. And some of us had entire industries change, but new things popped up in their place.
Things.
Yeah, we created things and we adopted new concepts and realities.
We took the time to learn new things.
We innovated. And our society has become even better on the other side of this.
People were thoughtful. People learned how to work from home. There became a work from home revolution after this where people refused to go back to their office 9 to 5 and the world had to let them because we proved that it was possible. That's a story I like to tell these days.
So imagine the story that you're going to tell one day on the other side of this. And what ends up happening is you start to actually pre-pave that story becoming reality. And it helps remind you, too, that you will be in a different place on the other side of this. And it will end. It's temporary. So I'm not going to say none of us are going to get out of this without PTSD or without being a little bit more of a germaphobe. This is probably going to change
real
us.
Hardship, loss, death, potentially in their families.
Unemployment.
Financial hardship. Like, we're not saying that we're not going to get out of this unscarred. We're just saying that even people who are scarred, you know what's funny is the people who are scarred tend to be the ones who are the most resilient. Like, it's the ones who fear their ability to bounce back are the ones who have never had to bounce back from something as hard, you know?
And in a strange way, I've also noticed that the people who have been through some of the hardest things tend to be the most joyful in the smallest ways in life.
Right. You learn, it's a huge contrast experience.
Imagine everything that we're going to appreciate after this that
sitting
we had
outside
taken for granted.
And going out to eat, right? Like just eating dinner with your friends out to eat at a restaurant.
Things are going to feel so joyful on the other side of this when before they were just normal.
I would also note to you, Meg, and to everyone, because this is probably something we all need to be doing right now, is note where there is abundance. Because right now, I think the fear of PTSD and the disaster prepping that you mentioned is that natural. It comes from a place of scarcity. And humans, when we are afraid, we tend to believe that everything's going to run out. And that's why people start to hoard, right? We hoard toilet paper, we hoard groceries. And right now, there was a toilet paper shortage for a little while, and I have plenty of toilet paper. There was a frozen food shortage for a little while, and I have plenty of frozen food. Like, as far as disaster prepping goes, it seems to me that we've all still been able to have the things we basically need. I haven't heard anyone who's struggling to find things that you can't go without. So there's abundance there. And there's also abundance in terms of people connecting. There's an abundance of connection. Maybe you have more of an abundance of time than you had before. Or creativity.
That's making me think that part of how I think we're all going to get through this is we're going to have to put some boundaries around the type of news that we consume. Because there is
that's true. There's
much
an abundance of that too
out there,
which is not a good kind of abundance.
Well, there's an abundance of really scary stories out there right now.
Yeah.
And there's also an abundance of people sharing stories about how they're connecting and how they're taking care of the people in their community, even from 6 feet away. And so you can choose what kind of abundance you put your attention on. And I think, just as a general rule, I think we need to consume less news about the coronavirus. Not none. I understand you need to stay informed. Things are changing every day, but you don't need to be checking it all throughout the day.
Oh my God. No, if you're doing that, we need to have a serious intervention.
You don't need to have like the news on all the time, or you don't need to have, articles
have
popping
one check a day. You can update yourself once a day, and that's probably more than you need.
Because guess what? What you're doing is not going to change. Stay at home.
Right.
And wash your hands and stay 6 feet away from people. That's not going to change.
And try to keep doing your work and take showers and eat and
call your friends.
Right. Proceed with life every day. And it's going to be like that for a while.
Yeah. So part of this is we're already so scared. Don't feed your own fear constantly.
Yeah.
Seek out abundance of things that you want to see more of. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be a marathon, you guys. I don't think it's gonna be a sprint. It's gonna be a marathon, and we're gonna have to be in this together and keeping our own sanity every step of the way. So,
I mean,
reach out to your people.
One of the cornier, but I like it, quotes that I refer back to sometimes is, you have made it through 100% of your worst days. Because you're still here. And so that will be true, Meg, a week from now, and a month from now, and 6 months from now, and a year from now. And I'm not saying you won't have had some really bad days in that time, but you will still have made it through 100% of your worst days. Yeah. And that's something to be grateful for. And that's something to, if I were to leave us with one message, it's we got to trust in our resilience. We have to trust that we are tougher and more flexible than we might give ourselves credit for. Being tough and rigid means you're breakable. Being tough but flexible means you're resilient. And I think all of us are more resilient than we've given ourselves credit for. But some of us, especially those of us who are younger and haven't been through as many ups and downs of life, this is one of the first major things that we're living through. I mean, for us, it's probably the second major crazy thing that we're living through. But for some of you Gen Z people, this is the first thing you remember having lived through that's crazy. And like, people bounce back. That's just kind of the nature of humans. And you're not different than that because you're human too. So you don't have to know how you're going to make that happen now, though. Today, you don't have to worry about how you're going to bounce back. That's the beautiful thing about being resilient is like future you can figure that out. That's a problem for future Meg to solve.
Yes, future Meg has a lot more information than current Meg.
Yeah, future Meg like knows when the quarantine ends. Future Meg like has all the information she needs in order to bounce back. Current Meg doesn't, and that's what's creating the anxiety. Is current Meg's trying to know what future Meg knows, and you can't. So why don't we leave that to someone who's older, wiser, and has more information than you? Okay?
Take it day by day for now.
Okay. So one thing we will leave you with as we wrap up is, we haven't mentioned this in a while, if you want to get on our list and get texts, we've been texting people twice a week, every week for a while on Mondays and Fridays. I get a lot of feedback after our Monday text goes out that people really appreciated it and it was the exact message they needed to hear that day. I've been trying to pick messages that are on point for what we're going through that week.
We want it to feel relevant, and we know what we're all feeling right now, and we're trying to be just a little spark of hope or validation or reassurance.
Encouragement.
A couple of times a week. So if you want to sign up for that, there's 2 ways to do that. You can either go to the link in the episode description, which will take you to a little form on our website where you can fill it out and put your phone number in, and then you are added in to receiving text messages.
Or you can text us at the following number, 703-783-3223. But you got to do it right, okay? So if you text us, you have to do your first name, 1 space, then your email address. And then that's it.
Otherwise, it won't work properly. You'll know because you'll have gotten a text back.
You'll know you did it right when you get a confirmation text. I trust you guys to figure it out. You're sitting at home. You're on your phone all day. You're looking at news. Why don't you get texts from us instead? For 2 minutes of that time, we could distract you from what's going on right now. Okay, so that's that.
If any of these I was just going to say you could leave a comment.
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, always. And if you're someone whose question we answered, we'd love to hear from you. So you can either email us.
We love getting updates.
contact@clarityonfire.com. Or, of course, you can leave a comment if this episode was exactly what you needed. Link to that in the episode notes. And as a reminder, the episodes we mentioned today that are good for next listening will also be listed in the episode notes. And I'll try to find 1 or 2 that align with what Multi-Trick Pony was asking and throw those in there as well. And what I wanted to add before we wrap up is that we had such good feedback about the last time we did a reading for you guys. Remember how?
A card reading.
We did an oracle card reading. A lot of you commented and said, could you do this again? Because I really liked that. We're going to do it again. In fact, as long as this thing's going on, we're going to keep doing those. So every other Tuesday, we'll be back with a card reading.
Yeah, we feel like you might need a little bit of extra guidance from the universe right now. I know I feel that way. So let's all just get a little bit of a tuned in reading, at least while we're panicking.
I've got a couple decks too. And I've got some people who are more witchy than me who we could bring on. Like, we could make the, messages from the universe. We're going to make them a thing for a while, at least. Until we maybe don't need to lean on that quite so much anymore.
So you will be hearing from us more Tuesdays than you anticipated.
All right. So we'll be back on Tuesday with another message from the universe just for you.
All right. See you then.